Welcome to my yellow recap. In the near future, the economic situation has struggled to the point that only 20% of the citizens are employed and the rest of the population are rotting in poverty. Eventually, the government decides to build a wall in the middle of the city, so now the jobless live outside of it in an area known as the zone, and the actives live in the prosperous city behind a wall. A strict army of guards protects this wall 24/7. 30 years after the wall was built, the situation in this one includes a large number of untreated diseases and a lack of safe drinkable water. In his own, Noah is going around checking sleeping people for clean water and tries to steal from a girl. When she reacts, Noah's mother appears from behind with a knife and makes her drop the bottle. Suddenly, a huge announcement appears on the screens of the wall saying that the government will be offering jobs for everyone soon, but this owners have trouble believing it. Meanwhile, in the city, Ruben and his wife Tage are getting ready to go to work at Aquaville, the only water company. Their daughter miauw is getting dressed in different clothes than the rules indicate, so Ruben has to scold her not to get fined. He also reminds her to practice or exercises more often because she's mute and she's already seen as an outcast, so she must work hard to succeed. When they arrive at the office, they learn that Minister of Labor Monroe is finally being freed after a year of being a hostage because they've reached a deal with the rebels that kidnapped him. For the first time in a decade, Prime Minister Nadia visits the zone to give a very fake speech about equality and inform them what the deal is about. The rebels will release her husband Monroe, and in exchange 10,000 owners will be given jobs in the city under the Solidarity Job Program. This owners are very happy to hear the news, but the actives are worried because they have a negative perception of poor people. After the announcement is over, Minister Monroe is released by the rebels and the guards take him to reunite with Nadia, who asks him in a whisper to announce he was treated well. Monroe tells everyone he's fine, but once he leaves with Nadia in their car, it's revealed he's missing 2 fingers. He's surprised that Nadia accepted the deal because she hates owners, but she had to, because men kidnapping caused an international scandal and the World Bank would stop lending them money if they kept ignoring the situation. At home, Monroe is given new fingers and his daughter Zoe tells him he will answer questions later because right now his stress will distort his answers. Meanwhile, Noah goes to class with Miss Dew Robinson, who worries that some of his students may be drinking too much. Sight has got an illegal substance some addicts use to replace the lack of water. Robinson teaches them the origins of the current system and says people shouldn't have to work in order to exist and be someone. Noah thinks that work equals freedom and mentions his father, who won the lottery 13 years ago and now is living happily in South Europe. After class, Noah sees Volley stealing things from the school kitchen, but she runs away by escaping through the window. At the wall, this owners are being interviewed to see who gets to join the program. If anyone looks sick because they drank contaminated water, they're instantly kicked out of the line. Is the eyes interviewed together with 2 other women, but one of them is kicked out because she stinks of anxiety. They're asked pretty intense questions about their background, and since there's only 1 spot left, is your lies, and tells them the other girl is an addict, so she gets the job. Before are able to end of the city, they're given a code tattoo on their wrists. At Aquavit, Tage is making mistakes in her work, which has earned her 6 warnings already. This only stresses her out more. At the same time, Ruben is shocked to bump into the dead body of his director, who he has worked himself to death. However, instead of mourning, Ruben immediately calls his father Silas, who is a higher up in the company, and says he wants to run for the position. Silas is pretty sick and can't afford proper treatment, but his son doesn't know this. So when Ruben says he wants a better position, Silas immediately wants to help so Ruben can support him when he can't work anymore. Later, Tage meets with her Hans, a co-worker she's having an affair with. They've been conspiring to steal important business data from Aquavit, which they plan to sell and use the money to leave the country. However, Tage hasn't been able to get close enough to Silas, even if she's family. At that moment, a guard finds them and tries to take them away, but Hans quickly knocks him out and Tage returns to her station only to continue to make mistakes. She figures that at this rate she'll end up in the zone. In the meantime, head of security Gene interrogates Monroe. He explains the awful situation he was in and mentions the torture, but he assures her that he hasn't told the rebels any state secrets. Afterward, Nadia tells Monroe to get back to work, assigning and break so he can get treatment. Monroe promises he can do this, but Zoe is worried it's too soon and that it won't be good for his health. While Monroe gives a speech full of propaganda, Ruben and Tage have an argument. Ruben wants the new position because he's desperate to send miauw to Phoenix Academy, which accepts autistic children. But Tage thinks it's naive of him to think Silas will help in any way. She also says that Mel will never succeed and that they should have abandoned her, which is heard by the kid. Miauw runs to a room to find comfort in your talking doll, and Ruben runs to comfort her too. He also gives her a taser just in case. In his own, Jeff tells his wife Lisbeth that he was chosen but she doesn't take it well, saying it's suspicious and that she doesn't want him to go. Jeff gets her to soften up with a kiss. Later, Ruben meets with Silas, who informs he's been cleaning his son's profile. He informs Ruben that he's gotten him an invitation to an exclusive ministerial party, and that he should announce he'll be running for director then, so it'll be important for him to present a good family image. Meanwhile, Hans meets with Jean and it's revealed they're secretly working with the rebels from the zone. They want to find dirt on Aquavit because it's not year's biggest financial supporter, so they agree Tage will steal the information from Sila's office tomorrow to meet with the rebels later. Afterward, Hans has taken through a secret tunnel so he can meet with Boris and stay with the rebels. The next day, the guards take hundreds of donors on a bus into the city and tell them they can only be at their workplace. They aren't allowed to wander around the city. His yacht is assigned to Ruben's house, but Tage closes the door on her face. Ruben brings her in and tells her to tidy up Miauw's toys but not to interact with her. Miauw doesn't want to let go of her doll, and Izzy feels bad when Ruben takes it by force. There's a box that Jan doesn't know how to open and goes to ask Miauw, who was taking her medicine. Miauw almost cases her, but with soft words Izzy gets her to help. Then Izzy puts away the toys but hides the doll under the blankets. When the special team comes to pick up the toys, they spit on Izzy, claiming his owners are stealing their job cops. Meanwhile, Jeff is sent to the government building because Nadia thinks he'll be the perfect face for their propaganda. He appears on TV and says he's happy to be there and that the program is going well because the government is great. Afterward, he isn't allowed to touch anything, and he's kept in an area for his owners, but he still steals a perfume. At Aquavit, Tage tries to visit Silas to access his computer, but she's stopped by a guard because they're investigating Hans and she must testify when Ruben comes home. Tage hasn't returned yet and she won't answer his calls. Desperate to look good at the party, Ruben points out that Izzy looks a lot like his wife, so she'll replace her tonight. Izzy accepts in fear of being fired, and Ruben lends her Tage's clothes, including a bracelet, to hide her zone or number. At Nadia's house, the F family learns that most active things owners are here to steal their jobs and that they refuse to touch them. There have also been 22 cases of aggression against owners. However, Naughty US as everyone will have to adapt for the sake of public relations. At the party, Izzy is very nervous, but luckily wives aren't expected to say much, and the higher-ups get a good impression. Ruben makes her dance with him, but Izzy can't take it anymore and leaves. As she goes down the corridor, she discovers that the other children are making fun of Miauw for being mute, causing her to scream. Suddenly, Silas shows up and takes her away. When the family reunites, Silas reveals he knows Tage has been replaced and scolds Ruben for his weak family. When this owners go home, Lisbeth thanks Jeff for the perfume with some naughty action. Izzy shows no the money she's made and they hide in a secret box with their savings. Meanwhile, Tage is finally freed and goes to meet with Hans, only to find Jean instead. She explains that she failed her mission, and when Jean gets too pushy, Tage becomes anxious and demands to see Hans, so Jean knocks her out and takes her to this one so boards can hide her too. The next day, Ruben realizes Tage has gone for good and asks these yonder places wife at work. He even teaches her how to use the system. At first, Izzy refuses, but she changes her mind when she realizes she can ask for much more money, which Ruben accepts to pay. At the office, Ruben is accepted as one of the candidates for the director position. Is your eyes nervous and makes a few mistakes at the computer, but her fear of getting caught helps her concentrate and she begins to work well at Luckin's. She has trouble with the food box, but she opens it after seeing a coworker that talks about all the people that have died this year in the company because she doesn't eat fast enough. Her food has taken away when a lunch break ends, and she must return to the computer. Meanwhile, Jeff meets with Nadia and her family, and he's given the position of Monroe special advisor. They want him to help make the program a success and diffuse the current attention in the city, so they quickly put him on TV. Monroe is nice in front of the cameras, but when they're left alone, he snaps at Jeff and almost chokes him, only to be interrupted by Zoe. Later, over dinner, Zoe tries to tell Nadia how bad Monroe's mental health is, but Nadia tells her to shut up or she'll fire. In his own, Noah is helping Robinson with some old newspapers and finds an article about the lottery winner that makes him realize his yacht has been lying about his father. Upset, he wanders around and has tripped by Volley, who notices his mood and invites him to have Sight is Scott with her. However, the substance makes Noah sick. In the rebels' hideout, Hans goes to check on Tage and confesses he's been using her to get access to Silas because he believes in his owners' rights. Tage thinks owners deserve to be here, so Hans lie her in the cell. Afterward, Tage is given 2 bottles of water and she must guess which one was poisoned. Later in the afternoon, Easy Eye is taken by a guard because an employee identified her as a friend of Hans, who is still being investigated. Luckily, Jean is there and uses her power to free her, misdirecting the attention toward other women. When Izzy leaves work, Jean follows her to know what's going on and immediately calls Boris to tell him of the replacement. They agree they'll try to get his yacht to help them too. Once Seasyal gets home, she notices Noah is missing and starts looking for him everywhere, only to bump into Boris. It's revealed he's his father and he abandoned the family to become a rebel. He asks his yacht for her help, but she refuses to get involved. Moments later, Isyal learns that Noah is at Robinson's home and the teacher manages to make a broth that helps Noah throw out the has got to feel better afterward. Jan tells Robinson that she's replacing Tage and that she'll use the money to leave his own with no. Then Jan goes home only to discover the rebels stole her savings. Meanwhile, Ruben is called urgently to check on Silas, who hasn't been feeling well. He finally learns about his illness and is devastated to learn his father doesn't believe in him, he's just using him. The next morning it's revealed that Monroe takes a lot of medicine to be able to function. Over breakfast, Nadia informs him his owner has killed his employer and they have to keep it under wraps. At the rebels' hideout, Isa has no choice but to accept to help to get back her money. And they tell her she'll receive a chip to insert in Sila's computer. Later, Hans learns that ties water in the 2 days and accuses the rebels of torture. But his concerns are ignored. Afterward, he checks on Ties and secretly gets her some water. But after seeing her condition, Hans decides to kill her, to put her out of her misery. At Aquavit, an employee bumps into his hand. Then she finds the chip in her hand. Ruben is put through a serious interview, full of trick questions to make him prove his normal. Then he's asked to hire a friend of his to prove his personal feelings don't come before his loyalty to the company. During lunch break, his yacht tries to get into Sila's office, but she bumps into the CEO. Both alone, he drags her into his office and takes advantage of her in exchange for promoting Ruben. In the meantime, Jeff is called to not office because there is owners wandering around and playing soccer. Jeff explains they aren't escaping. They just finished their jobs and are killing time. But the ministers find this unacceptable, and Jeff is sent with Monroe to stop them. Gently once there, Jeff tries to explain calmly to this owners that they'll be fired if they don't return to their employers, but this owners kick the ball to hit road through the car window and start calling Jeff a snicker. At that moment, an alarm rings and his owners run away while Jeff returns to the car and finds Monroe gone. When Jeff returns home and tells Lisbeth about his day, they have a fight because Lisbeth thinks he's on the wrong side. In his own, Noah begins hanging out a lot with Bali, and they decide to sneak into the city through a secret tunnel. However, as soon as they get to the streets, they're seen by the police, who open fire on them. Vali rushes back to the tunnel, but Noah ends up wandering around the city. He may exit to Ruben's house to look for his mother, and miauw holds him a taser point. Outside, Ruben and his arrive in the car, and Jan tells him what happened with both alone. However, Ruben isn't surprised and says it's common for wives to do this so their husbands can succeed. When they enter the house, they find Noah. At the same time, the TV shows an alert over his owner infiltration. Ruben feels bad for his Jan agrees to drive her and Noah into the wall. On the way there, they're stopped by the guards, but Ruben says he's taking a servant home and that Noah is his daughter. After dropping Noah at the tunnel, Ruben apologizes for everything and explains he's desperate for the promotion because of his daughter's situation, which makes his Jan understand him better. When the duo gets home, Noah accuses Isyur selling her body to Ruben and Yaz slaps him. Before asking what's wrong, Noah confronts her about the lie on his yacht, explains how boards abandoned them because of his activism, but Noah is still angry with her. The next day, Monroe suddenly appears on TV without having Nada's approval first. He rants against this owners of your kids, saying that an invasion is inevitable. In his own hands, gets a call from Jean, who tells him that they need to act soon before Monroe's speech gets the program in trouble. Pons meets with the leader, Saw, who turns out to be Robinson, and they start to make plans for an invasion. However, they'll need the intel from Isyur first. Afterward, Monroe has taken to a psychologist and kept under watch 24/7. While Nadia asks her father passed around for advice. He used to be a prime minister too and is responsible for the Way Wall, thinking it was the only solution to keep order. Then Nadia learns from Zoe that Monroe's speech made many people fire or kill their owners. There is now chaos in the city. Nadia tells her to make an announcement, saying Monroe was speaking based on false information, and any person that fires their owner will be punished. At Aquaville, Ruben goes to see one of his opponents and finds him dead in his office. Meanwhile, during lunch, is approached by Ma, another one of Ruben's opponents. Ma asks Jan to marry her so they can defeat Ruben together, but Heezy refuses. When her sleeve accidentally slipped back, one notices her zone or mark. Izzy immediately calls Ruben and warns him, so Ruben rushes to the parking lot to confront Ma. She doesn't want to keep a secret, so Ruben ends up beat her up and killing her. Then he calls Silas, who quickly takes care of the body. Later, Ruben sees on the security cameras that the special team is trying to take the doll from Miauw and rushes out of work. Miauw bites the guy and hides in her room, so the man has no choice but to leave without the now broken doll. Soon as Ur arrives and comforts Miauw, showing her how to fix the doll with some threat. By the time Ruben arrives, there's a guard at the door, but when they go inside, his jar has already changed and the guard leaves without issues. Then Ruben breaks down and confesses he killed Ma, so as Ur comforts him and they end up doing the naughty. Meanwhile, Nadia asks Jeff to make a video showing how much his life has changed for the better thanks to the program and to include Lisbeth in it. Knowing his wife won't help, Jeff goes home and hides a key lure on the shelves. He also brings good food and a nice dress for Lisbeth, then convinces her to dance with him. They have a nice dinner together until Noah arrives and accuses Isyal doing nasty things with her employer, which looks bad on camera. In the evening, Nadia discovers lots of citizens gathering outside the government building in protest of the program. After sending guards to get rid of them, she tries to talk to Monroe, but he's cold and distant. The next day, Jeff discovers people in this one hate him too and insult him on the streets. Isyal learns that Noah has been staying with Bali and goes looking for him, but he refuses to go home. At the government offices, Jeff arrives late because the haters beat him up while his heavily edited video is played on TV. Jeff is sent to the makeup department to hide his wounds for an Imp Morton meeting. Monroe comes by and paints Jeff like a clown to insult him, but Zoe quickly takes them away. Afterward, Nadia introduces Jeff and other members of the program to the president of the World Bank, and Jeff offers a heartful speech. The president is impressed, but in private, he tells Nadia he can't lend her the money as long as Monroe keeps causing trouble. Without hesitation, Nadia later appears on TV and announces Monroe has been fired. At Aquaville, Ruben and the last candidate hold a meeting with the higher-ups. They're informed Mal has disappeared, so Ruben accuses his opponent of killing her, using the story Silas got for him as an alibi and even presenting fake information against the other man to win. Meanwhile, Isjar manages to sneak into Silas' office and puts the chip on his computer. At that moment, Silas arrives in his yard, runs to hide, but Silas finds her anyway. He grabs her by the neck and threatens her, but suddenly he starts feeling sick, so Isyal gets to run and grab the chip with the information. On her way out, Silas calls Ruben and he rushes to confront Jan, slaps her, causing her to drop the chip. Isyaz where she was forced to do this and that she isn't a rebel, blaming Ruben for putting her in this position, so he just takes her away. In his own, Noah and Vali go to the rebel hideout and asked about his father, but because no one knows Boris' old name, nobody knows what they're talking about and kicks them out. The teens pretend to leave, but on their way out, they get away from the guard and take a dark tunnel to sneak inside the building. Then they eavesdrop on the conversation of the activists, and Noah learns that his teacher is the leaker. Sometime later, Nadia goes to see Ro, explaining she had no choice but to fire him to get the money from the bag, which has been approved now. An angry Monroe then reveals that he lied to Jean and that he actually did tell the rebels all their secrets. It turns out that Aquavit has been polluting the water in the zone on purpose, with Monroe's blessing to make a profit by selling clean water. The activists just need proof to attack, and that's the file as you're supposed to get. Nadia discusses this with Zoe and they get an idea. Meanwhile, Jeff goes home and tells Lisbeth they've been given the chance to live permanently in the city. However, Lisbeth refuses and an argument ensues, during which is revealed Lisbeth used to be an activist too. In the end, he moves to the city alone and in his new apartment. The first thing he does is have a shower to enjoy the clean water. Outside in the city, activists' pamphlets are starting to appear on the streets. At Ruben's home, his yacht overhears him talking to Silas, who thinks his son should kill Izzy, but Ruben defends her. Then he volunteers to take his Jan to the wall, and Silas uses the chance to make a call. During the rite, Ruben offers his Jan to become his wife permanently, but she refuses, so Ruben arranges to make it look like she was fired instead. When his Jan crosses the wall, Silas' men capture her, and she's humiliated to make her talk. Jan tells them about the chip she lost, and Silas thinks he can use her to capture the rebels. He sends his Jan to the meeting spot where she was supposed to drop the chip, and when Jean shows up, Silas' men arrest her. His yacht tries to run away, but she gets captured again. In the city, Ruben has to destroy the doll to make Miauw leave the room. He takes her to the special academy so she can take the test, but she refuses to do anything. Instead, she breaks the tablet and runs away. Ruben goes after her and yells at her, but it's pointless. Back to Jeff. He finishes recording a new speech and goes look from an road or showing, only to find the minister dead in the pool. At that moment, so he shows up and kills Jeff with a shot, which is part of the plan. Nadia appears on TV saying Jeff killed Monroe and he was shot by the guards when he tried to escape. Then she goes on a rant against this owner, saying they become too dangerous and that's why she's suspending the program. She also announces a mass raid to catch the rebels. In his own, a furious Lisbeth roasts Jones at the screen. Meanwhile, as he is locked up with Jean, who has been burned and tortured for information, Silas tells Bartolome of what he's discovered, and after delivering the news to Nadia, Barthélemy informed Silas that Ruben was chosen for the director position. In the rebels' headquarters, Hans insists on rescuing these Jean, but Saul refuses, saying he can't destroy the activists' network just for them. Noah and Volley overhear the conversation and they are disgusted to learn that the rebels are as bad as the people they are opposing, so they leave. At Aquaville, Ruben has given the director's office and Barcelona informs him that is arranged thing, so Miauw is accepted at the academy. Afterward, an employee stops by and gives him a little trinket, saying his wife must have dropped earlier. Ruben takes a closer look and discovers the chip, so he connects it to his computer and finally finds out about the poisoned water. Disgusted by this, Ruben anonymously uploads the information online, which is seen by the government and the rebels. Soon Nadia appears on TV saying the information is all fake, but everyone in the zone responds by stoning the screen. Ruben goes home to take Miauw, telling her they'll find Azir and escape together. When they cross the wall, they're attacked by Volley, but they let him go when he says he wants to seize ya. Noah explains what happened and suddenly they hear a bomb outside. So Ruben tells the teams to hide with Miauw while he goes to rescue Hizya, taking Volley's taser with him. Moments later, the rebels finally launched an invasion from multiple fronts, and Nadia's defense plans aren't enough because it's not only his owners. Many people from the city have left their jobs and are supporting the cause as well. Saul wants to take over the TV first, but Boards takes Hans and a few others to attack the guards and demand information about Hizya. Meanwhile, Ruben corners Silas at the office and hits him until Silas agrees to take him to Hizya. On their way out, they're seen by another employee right before the TV announces Ruben as a wanted man because the ETA team tracked the late to his computer. Soon they're surrounded by armed guards, so Ruben is arrested and locked up with Hizya. In just a few hours, the wall finally comes down and thousands of donors and of the city. A bomb explodes near Always' car and the guards have to evacuate her. Near the wall, the teams in Miauw are scared of all the violence and run to hide in an empty apartment. Noah has a wound on his shoes. Besides, they should make a blood pact, promising to stick together until the end. At the minister's residence, Zoe finds her mother on the roof watching the fall of the wall and blames her for everything. Zoe refuses to leave the city and swears she will testify against Nadia to see her fall as well. In the meantime, the guards get orders to kill the prisoners. Ruben is immediately shot, but before his eyes hurt, Tudor shows up and kills the guard first. Then the rebels take his Ruben to safety. At the same time, Saul and his men find Nadia, and they kill her behind closed doors. Afterwards, though, he approaches Saul and offers his experience to help him manage the country. 3 days pass. On the TV announces that Nadia is self-deleted, marking the beginning of a new era. Hans is devastated to discover Jean died and tells his men to identify all the bodies, because he doesn't want any brave warrior to die anonymously. Lisbeth uses the new holes on the wall to go to the city and get Jeff's ashes. Wanting to honor him, Ruben recovers in hospital and Miauw looks over him while his jar reunites with Noah. Forrest comes by to check on them and it forces him to confess the truth to Noah, but things are just awkward between them. When Ruben is feeling better, as Jan tells him she accepts to be his wife, Noah likes the idea and invites Folly to come with them, but she turns him down. Later, at a press conference, Saul finally announces the end of the old system and the beginning of a new equal one. Afterward, he goes to see Passer One, who hasn't been well since not his death. It's then revealed that Saul is Passer-Round's son and he was thrown out of the city because he didn't approve of his father's system. Saul promises to give Passer-Round the best doctor so he can live and suffer under the new system like this. Owners did under his to pass Pacer in shock. Naughty suddenly shows up alive and well, thanks to having accepted to work with her brother. Thanks for watching this video.